In this video, I'm going to show you how to make your ascorbic acid solution. So what we're going to need for this is we're going to need a 250 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask. So I'm going to go up to glassware, click on Erlenmeyer, and add that 250 milliliter flask to my workbench. The other things I'm going to need is I'm going to need a bunch of different chemicals. So I'll go over to solutions and I'll grab the solutions that I need. So I'm going to need some of this potassium iodide. I'm going to go back to the stock room. I'm also going to need some hydrochloric acid. I'm going to click on that, move it around just so that I can see what I'm dealing with here. Back to the stock room. I'm going to need some starch. And the starch is already prepared for us, which is very nice. This can be very tricky to make in a lab, but in the virtual land, it's much easier. And the last thing that we're going to need is some of this ascorbic acid. So I'm just going to click on this, and I'm going to put this right here. So we have our various different solutions that we're going to be adding to our flask. And this flask right here, this is the one that we're going to be using to titrate against. So what we're going to do is just go up and get this potassium iodide right here. I'm going to drag it over to here. I'm going to add this 5 milliliters of this. Okay, so I'm going to take that. I'm just going to precisely pour 5 milliliters. Now again, if I was doing this in a lab, I would be using a pipette. I would be drawing up the pipette and using that to make the flask. Okay, so we could do that potentially. Let's try that. If we go to the stock room, what kind of pipettes do we have? Pipettes, yeah, we've got 5 millimeters, 10 milliliters, 25 milliliters. Those are okay. The other thing that we could potentially use is some graduated cylinders, but for the purposes of this lab, let's just keep with the pouring method, knowing it's not the best method that we could potentially use. The next thing I'm going to do is grab this hydrochloric acid, drag it over to this, and I'm going to add 4 milliliters of this. I'll pour that in. You can see that volume has been removed from the HCl. We'll click X to remove that and get that out of the way. Starch, instructions say that we need to add 3 milliliters of starch. So let's go 3 and pour that in. Once we've got that, we'll press X. And the final thing that we need to do is add 10 milliliters of ascorbic acid. So with this ascorbic acid, I'm going to take that and I just need to get 10 milliliters of that. Pour. Okay, so that's what I've got right here. Disconnecting that, we can now clear our workbench of this stuff because we don't need it. And the workbench is surprisingly small, so we're just going to get rid of these right here. The things that what we're going to do with this is we are going to rename this, because what we want to do is we want to use this and titrate 3 times in our experiment. So first step is to rename this. I'm going to call this Brent Ascorbic 2. And I didn't quite spell that right, and we'll call it actually Ascorbic 1. So we're going to do that and call that Ascorbic 1. And the next thing that we're going to do is just duplicate these so that what we can do in the virtual lab is save a lot of time, and instead of having to add that Ki, HCl, starch, and ascorbic acid 3 times to different Erlenmeyer flasks, I can just take and duplicate these flasks and use them within my virtual lab. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to rename this one to Brent Ascorbic 2, and I'm going to duplicate this once again, and I'm going to call this Brent Ascorbic 3. Okay, so we've renamed it 3 different times. So now I've produced 3 different samples of ascorbic acid, each of them containing the required amounts of potassium iodide, hydrochloric acid, starch, and ascorbic acid. Once you've done this, take a screenshot of this to save for your lab report.